Welcome to Coffee with a Purpose, everyone. Got the recording started. I'm going to go ahead and enable the waiting room, Martin. And welcome to Bob and Deborah Brown from Natick Report, also Swellesley Report. And we're super interested in hearing all about your endeavor. I don't know whether Martin or I mentioned in our correspondence, kind of lining you folks up as guests or not. This group has bemoaned many times the dearth of local news reporting, at least in print form. But absent print, we've been really relying on the great work you guys have been doing with Natick Report. So we'd like to hear a lot more about it. Excuse me, my phone is ringing here. I think that might be Ricky.
Called D Hopper. Anybody know D Hopper?
So our usual protocol is to go around the room and do brief introductions. Bob and Deborah can get a chance to see who's in the audience. And Paul, why don't we start with you, since you've brought a guest to your office? You got to come off mute. Well, you just toggled it. There you go.
Good morning, folks. Again, we have a new director of the Council on Aging here in Natick, Mass, part of the Community Service Department. She's got the unfortunate pleasure of being my neighbor in the suites down here.
Did he actually just freeze? Interesting. Oh, good old technical problems on a Monday morning. Okay, well, while we're waiting for him to unfreeze, let's go. Oh, there you are. All of you had frozen. Start again.
All right, good morning.
Yeah.
Again, I have the new director of the Council on Aging here for the town of Natick, part of the Community Service Department. She comes from a solid background. She came directly here from the Cemetery Association in Needham. She works for the Jewish Family Network in Brookline and other places. So I'll introduce Donna now to you folks and let her take the wheel.
It's a pleasure to meet you all, but first and foremost, I want to disagree with Paul. It's a pleasure to be Paul's neighbor, and I really feel quite fortunate. I mean that with the bottom of my heart. I've had just to share a little bit about my experience. Worked with seniors for, I'm going to say, decades. Was the director of community life at Hebrew Senior Life in both Revere and in Randolph. And worked for as Paul said, Jewish Family and Children's Service for a number of years with Aging Well at Home, keeping seniors independent and living at home. My background is in social work and in education, and I was a teacher for a number of years while I did my social work. So let me just say, it is such a joy to be here, meeting with the staff, and now the opportunity to meet with you. And the seniors are incredible people here. So I really want to say to Paul, thank you for the warm welcome, and thank you for the opportunity to say hello.
That's great to meet you. And I think we've failed to get your full name. What? I'm sorry.
It's Donna Tarrats.
Donna Tarrats. Great. Great to have you with us. Cool. All right. Moving along with some of the on-screen or online folks. Carol.
Good morning, Carol Berkowitz, 50-year resident of Natick and a special educator in Framingham for 30 years.
Thank you, Carol. Pat.
Good morning. Pat Conaway, Keep Natick Beautiful.
Thanks, Pat. Rick.
Rick Devereaux, Eco Natick, and hello to the Browns. Thanks for being here. Thank you, Doug.
Martin. Thanks, Rick. Sally.
Hi, good morning. Sally Hopkins from actually beautiful Burning, California. I've lived here now for about 8 years, but I'm also part of Keep Natick Beautiful, and I'm Pat's sister. Welcome. Good morning.
Thanks, Sally. Deborah Mitchell.
Hi, guys. It's me, Deb.
Yep. Hi,
Yeah.
Deborah.
I have a wild turkey that lives with here.
Yeah,
And,
extensively reported on by Natick.
yeah, he's the,
I'm sure
he's
we'll
the
get to
mas-
that.
he's the mascot. He can't be relocated. But if there's enough complaints, they will just euthanize him. So
I'm sure
it's
it's
out of my
a
reach.
love-hate
I'm not gonna
relationship.
be the one to make that decision. It's up to the police department, not me.
Yep, yeah. Good to have you this morning,
Thank
Deborah.
you. Yeah, thank you, sir.
Tom,
I'll see you next week on the show, Doug.
yes, yep. Tom Daly?
Hi, I'm Tom. I'm Echo Natick, 34 years, a Natick resident, and welcome.
Thanks, Tom. And let's see, Brinley.
Good morning, Brinley Vickers, 24-ish year resident of Natick, 2 kids, 1 kid in the public school, about to say 2. I'm interested in all things Natick. As you guys know, I'm happy to have you here. Look forward to hearing your story this morning. Thanks.
Thanks, Brinley. And Diana Hopper, who is a new attendee for Coffee with a Purpose, heard about us through Common Street Spiritual Center.
Hi, I'm Diana.
Hi.
Can you see me?
Yes, yeah.
I can't see me, so all right. I hope I look okay. No, so yeah, I'm in Ashland. Yeah, I'm not sure what else to say.
Diana, do you mind if I change your name or if you change your online name to Diana, unless you prefer to be called Di? We just like to use folks' real first and last names in the Zoom windows.
It
I can
doesn't
change
matter
it.
to me.
Yeah.
Huh? I don't know how to change it.
I'll change it then. And I see Ricky Ball has joined us too. Good morning, Ricky.
Good morning.
Yeah, great to see you. We have Bob and Deborah Brown from Natick Report on this morning. Let's move to the folks at MetroWorks. Oh, I'm sorry, I forgot. Most important person, my wife, Sarah.
Hi, I'm Sarah. I am, as others have said, interested in all things Natick. Been a town meeting member and volunteer at various organizations, and looking forward to what you have to say.
Great. Let's go to the MetroWorks folks.
Yeah, literally have a full house. All our chairs are full here, which may be a precedent.
Wow.
Start with Cindy and move around.
I'm Cindy Bates, 5-year resident of Natick, trail steward, and Keep Natick Beautiful as a volunteer. Yes.
Good morning, I'm Kathleen Donovan. I'm 34-year resident of Natick, on the library board of trustees, and also volunteer with Keep Natick Beautiful. Welcome.
And Martin Kessel, neighbor in the Water Street area of Natick, and sort of co-host here of Coffee with a Purpose, chair of the Open Space Committee, and just about any other thing I could sort of accumulate over the years in Natick.
Hi, Bill Ramage. I think we're all tied into Keep Natick Beautiful, and a lot of us to Eco Natick. But I also serve as chair of the Community Preservation Committee.
And you'll get to introduce yourselves fully, but we'll go on to Gail.
Hi, I'm Gail Weston Roberts. Lived in Natick for a couple decades now. And Deborah, we actually met once because I used to do theater at Tikinan. And when you were still doing Swellesley Report, we were hoping you would cover Anne of Green Gables because we had a lot of kids and we had a lot of Wellesley actors on the cast. Well, don't give up. We still do. Oh, I don't do it anymore, actually, but I might go back, but yeah, I don't know.
I'm Donna McKenzie. It's a pleasure to be here, and the Browns are my parents' former neighbors, and we're wonderful neighbors. My parents are difficult people. See, I'm laughing. I knew I could relax them and make them laugh. But I am a town meeting member. I'm a member of the Charter and Bylaw Review Committee. Echo Natick I'm involved with. I just am involved with a lot of things at this point, and I'm a former school committee member. Great to be here.
Hi, I'm Carol Gloff, and you haven't seen me here, at least for a couple of years when I came and spoke, because I was running for the Library Board of Trustees. I lived in Natick 32 years and involved in a wide variety of things here in town.
I'm Judy Dixon. I just realized that in September I will be a 30-year resident of Natick, which is crazy. I have worked in the schools. I have worked for the rec department. I have run a family and community engagement grant for families with young children. I am currently the housing equity advocate at Family Promise Metro West. I'm affiliated with the First Congregational Church. I know Bob through the Natick Runners. And I've not mentioned here before, but I'm also on the board of Path for Adaptive Opportunities, which raises money to subsidize participation in the adaptive recreational opportunities for the Natick Recreation Parks like Camp Arrowhead and the Week Away Big Res and the Skyline Weekend Program. I've never mentioned that, but I'm involved in the disability community as well.
Great.
And that's it.
And that's it. Great. And I'm Doug. I co-host along with Martin this bunch, and most of my volunteer work is with the First Congregational Church, attempting to keep that building upright. So again, thank you, Bob. And Deborah, do you like to go by Deborah or Deb or?
That's good. That is also good.
That's the kind of person I like, because I wouldn't remember what you just said anyway. So thank you very much for joining us this morning. The floor is yours and the protocol is yours. We often let speakers present and then we engage in conversation afterwards. But if you are happy to take questions or comments during, just let us know and we'll ask away.
That sounds good. We have a brief presentation, and if anything in it is just ridiculous, feel free to stop it, but otherwise I'll try to breeze through it and then we can take questions. Thanks very much for having us. Appreciate it.
Okay.
There was some thingy to do to make it bigger, I think.
I like that masthead more than you really want to know.
Yeah, so that, I mean, we borrowed that from our Swelser report. We've had that from the beginning, and we just, a lot of what we've done with Natick report has been just copied what we've done with Swelser report because it's a successful formula. And Swellesley, of course, focuses on Wellesley, and extending what we do into Natick wasn't much of a stretch for us. We lived in Natick for 10 years. As Donna said, we used to live next to our parents. And then we moved to Wellesley, and we're actually right on the Natick line. We're the only house on our street in Wellesley. So all my neighbors are in Natick. So it's very natural for us to be able to cover Natick. Although I will say, when our kids were growing up, they went to the Wellesley school system. I can't say I was paying a lot of attention to Natick politics or the schools or anything like that. But it was easy enough to kind of switch back to it, because we've always, I mean, because of our neighbors, we sort of are naturally clued into what's going on in Natick.
May I ask what road that is?
It's South Lincoln Street.
I have no idea where that is.
It's near Elm Bank.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah. So we're husband and wife, and we met at BU in Boston. And I studied journalism. Deborah studied communications. I've been a journalist throughout my career. I started actually really working at BU for their alumni magazine, and thought I would become a sports reporter. And then I ended up at the Boston Herald, and I sort of saw what the sports desk was like, and I was like, maybe not. And I mean, there are some difficulties in being a sports reporter. You basically have to work at night all the time. It sort of sucks some of the fun out of enjoying sports. And I kind of got roped into the business section, which was very civil. Basically, we had to stop working when the stock market closed. And so I realized that that was kind of a more reasonable way to practice journalism. And then wound up at a technology business magazine called Network World, and that's where I spent most of my career. It was based initially sort of in the Speed Street area, and actually where REI is right now. That was where it was when I was first there. And I had a brief stint at mass.gov working on the website there. So that was during the pandemic. So that was really interesting as well. So that was my sort of non-journalism thing, but I was hired as a content editor. And Deborah?
Sure, I can talk about me. Bob said he went to BU, and then I worked as an admin down in the financial district for a little while, and then I got a job as a copy editor, which was a better fit. Bob said he worked at Network World. I worked at Computer World for a little while. It's under the same umbrella of International Data Group, and really enjoyed that. I've also worked as copy editor and content developer for an environmental science firm that's in Natick. Then you know, I was home with the kids for a long time. And as I saw, like, I was concerned about my technical skills atrophying. So Bob said, why don't we learn to do WordPress and, you know, see what that's like. And that was really helpful. It I thought I'd be in a corporate job by now, but that kind of saved me. And Bob found a sneaky way to get me back to work.
Go Bob.
Yeah.
It just happened.
He said it just happened.
Yeah. So the Swells Report started in 2005, and I had my real job at Network World. I wasn't looking for an extra job, but I was sort of curious about blogging. So I started playing around, and I'm not a digit head at all, but you know, I'm a content guy, I'm a writer. And so I played around with blogging a little bit, and I created a page on where to go sledding in Wellesley. That was literally the first page that I ever did. And including Elm Bank. Oh, well, we live near Elm Bank, but I was like, what's out there beyond Elm Bank? And so I created that page, and then I ran every street in Wellesley just to get to know the town. And everybody does that now, but it was harder back then because you didn't have Strava and these apps that would let you figure out how to do it. I did it on one of those old atlases in the back of my car and kept marking it off with magic marker. You know, and then at the end found that I had one street over here and one street over here. So that's really how Swellesley started. And then I had breakfast with a friend of mine from the technology industry who was down on the Wellesley Townsman newspaper, which at that point was probably not that bad. But he was down on it, and he sort of planted the seed that maybe you should do more. And I was like, well, I do have a job. But one thing led to another, became a monster, and now Swellesley is clearly the main news source in Wellesley. And last year I was able, well, the year before actually, I was able to quit my day job at the state to go on it full time. So that was big. And so then going back to 2020, we decided, let's start Natick Report 2 because we don't have enough to do. And so we started it on April Fool's Day, and I always said, it was a joke. If it doesn't work out, it's just a joke. And it worked out. And so that's how it started. It's really just the two of us, but we have had interns, as Judy was mentioning earlier. And we had a great intern in Natick. She was a Natick High graduate, Ella. She's fantastic. And she's actually sort of studying journalism now in college. And we've had some interns for Swellesley as well. And we are very close, I think within the next month, going to have a student from BU who's going to start working for us through a program at BU. They've invited us to be part of a pilot program. And the really cool thing about it to me is that I think maybe when you were asking about interns before, Julie, you were sort of insinuating that, well, maybe it's like, it can be a lot of work, right, to have interns. I don't know if that's.
It can either be a hell of work.
Yes,
or it's
right.
work.
And for us, it's just been fantastic. I don't have any complaints. But this BU thing could even be better because the professors are going to handle all the editing, and it's part of a class, basically. So there's no sort of guilt on our part. We don't have to pay the intern because we pay our interns. But in this case, we don't because it's actually part of their class. So we'll provide story ideas and sort of make sure whatever stories they write are appropriate, but the professors will actually be doing the editing. So that'll be really good. That'll be really big help. But we do get a lot of help from people in the community as well. People send us photos of interesting things, like Rick Devereaux online. He'll send us photos of of things, and we get things from Keep Natick Beautiful as well. So that's all great. I mean, these don't need to be big in-depth stories. They just kind of give a flavor of what's going on in town. And we've had people write stuff every so often, like Deb just wrote us the thing on the turkey at Cedar Gardens. And, you know, I'll spend hours and hours and hours writing up a town meeting article. And then Deb writes her article on the turkey, just, you know, sort of from her heart. And the next thing you know, it's exploding on our site. So, so that was kind of fun.
I just have to say really quickly because we're on it. My brother-in-law from Swampscott sent me the turkey article, just so you know.
That's great.
These things travel. And, you know, it turned into some additional reporting the week after because somebody had messaged us and said the turkey was dead. And so then I wanted to verify if the turkey was dead. So I ended up spending much of my day talking to the Mass Environmental Police, the EPA and Mass Wildlife. And, you know, so that's, I mean, that's what you get when you have actual reporting, right? You can get things that are sort of floated out there online and social media and so forth, but then we're sort of backing that up with actual reporting. And so that was a good follow-up to that story, I think. So we kind of divvy things up. We both write. Deborah's a great writer, and I think our writing complements us, complements each other. You know, I'm more, I mean, I've been a news reporter for years, so I've sort of got that background. Deborah's good at that as well, but also more like feature stories and things like that.
Yes.
Yeah. And then you spend a lot of time on advertising as well.
I do. I spend too much time on advertising. That's the hard part when we get the two-person shop is I'll do, email, editorial in the morning, some planning, and then the afternoon I'm doing advertising, which I really like because I get to talk to a lot of different people. This job is very social. That's a big plus for this job. Even during COVID, we were still talking to people on the phone and connecting with people. So I love that it's, not isolated in an office. I can be out and talking to people all day, every day if I want. That's a real great thing about this job. And the advertising and sales just take up some time. We are hopefully hiring an advertiser to someone to help us with that, who has got a lot of experience and just lost her position doing advertising sales. So that would be a huge plus for us. That is something that we hope is coming down the pike soon to free me up a little bit. Natick Report has been great. We've been so welcomed by the community. And I think the only reason we're not getting more advertising is that we have not had the time to put into it. So we have, with somebody to help us out, that could be a real game changer. That's what we're keeping our fingers crossed for. In Wellesley, everybody knows us, and it doesn't take any convincing to someone who's inclined to advertise is not them having inclined. In Natick Report, the community knows us, who, they care about what's going on. The business owners, if you've ever, the business owners sometimes know the town and sometimes don't, you know what I mean? They might just come into work and then go home, so they don't know us as well. I remember the days of the tab. I'm sure you all remember the days of the tab, where that you get delivered to the businesses as well. So they might have had a little bit more of their fingers on the pulse at that time. So the first thing I do when I'm in conversation with the business is say, may I add you to our email list so you can get an idea of what Natick Report is and what we do. And they always say yes, and that's always good. And I say, just check in with us once a week, find out what's going on.
So we are a business. We're an S Corp. We've sort of evolved over the years. We were a sole proprietorship initially, and then for various liability reasons, we shifted to being an S Corp. If we had it all to do over again, maybe we would be a nonprofit. That's what a lot of news sites that are doing these days that are popping up in different communities. But I don't think it makes sense for us to do that at this point.
What does the S stand for?
Does
it actually?
Chapter S.
Chapter S? Okay.
Subchapter.
A subchapter. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's
It means that you own the business
and you pay the taxes for the business on your personal income tax.
Oh, okay.
That's about the extent of my knowledge. of
Yeah,
it.
that sounds right. Yeah, it's a little complicated. We often find out, oh, we needed to do this
Yeah.
form or that form. But it was advised doing that rather than becoming an LLC. I guess there are some benefits to it. So we generate most of our revenue from advertising, but of course, it's always good to have multiple streams of revenue. And we have a very important partnership with Google, which kind of came out of the blue, not entirely. We're part of a big trade group for publications like ours. And they partner with Google and Facebook. And of course, it's kind of a uncomfortable relationship. You know, in some respects, Google and Facebook are not our friends, but in other respects they are. So Google essentially pays us for our content, which is kind of amazing. Yeah, it's kind of amazing. There's a program called Google News Showcase. And we do, I think, have a link to it on probably the homepage of Natick Report. But I think some people will see it more than others, depending on whether you use an Android device or an iPhone. So if you have an Android device, then you're probably more likely to see it under your sort of news tab or whatever. And it's pretty wild that they approached 150 publications, including the New York Times, Wall Street Journal, Washington Post, and what? And as far as I know.
It probably took a while to say yes.
Yeah, so, well, it's a one-way conversation, you know, they tell us how much you're getting, it's under non-disclosure, all this kind of stuff. And, but it's been fantastic, and it's a little bit of work for us, we have to basically fill out these little panels every day that have 3 headlines and 3 images. And so that's a lot of content, we traditionally have not written, that much content. Now, this is for Swell Day, I should clarify. We're trying to get it for Natick as well, but again, it is a one-way conversation, so it's not like we can say, hey, let's just do this for Natick. That would be amazing.
Yeah.
But you know, we're sort of operating as one big publishing company, I guess you'd say, and this is a big source of revenue for us. And then we do get a lot of reader contributions, and that's really great, both in Natick and also.
The partnership with Google can be a little bit difficult during the vacation time that we were talking about earlier. Because whether we go on vacation or not, panels must be filled. So we can do them ahead of time and time them, but the news doesn't cooperate all the time. So, you know.
Wow. Oh, wow.
Yeah, but we've got to come up with clever ways to sort of generate this stuff and repopulate it with things that we've, like sort of what we call evergreen content, you know, best places to eat in Wellesley or that kind of stuff. So we don't get to everything, but we do our best to try to cover the most important news in town. And I watch an insane amount of meeting videos between Natick and Wellesley. This is what I do when I'm driving around and sometimes running, and you know, I try not to do it all the time, but so if I haven't met some of you in person, I know you from seeing you speak at meetings. So I sort of get confused about who I've met in real life. But you know, I know who the characters are and, you know, and all that sort of stuff. So I do try to do a really good job of covering town meeting, because I think that's one of those things that a lot of people just don't get. Like, they just don't even understand what it means. And you'll hear it. Like, is this a town meeting or town meeting, right? Like, there's lots of meetings in town. And so, I mean, I spoke to a woman last week in Wellesley who was putting forth a citizen petition, right? So you have articles at a town meeting coming from various departments of the government, but then also from people occasionally. And yeah, it was very eye-opening, but it's sort of as they were trying to do this, but didn't really understand at all how town meeting worked. So, you know, we're trying to do our part, I guess, to try to help educate people about that. And I wouldn't claim that I knew all that much about this either before I was doing this. So, you know, I know how it works. People get into this stuff once something really hits home for them. I mean, in many cases. And then we cover other meetings. We really like to do business openings and closings. That is always a hot story on Natick or Wellesley Report. If we can sort of get the scoop on their business is leaving or their business is going. So I sign up for all the emails for any business that comes into town, hoping that I'll, not that I want them to fail, but if they're sending out an email saying, hey, we're leaving, so I can stay on top of that. But we always appreciate when people let us know. We try to do the rounds pretty regularly, but there are certain places I don't get to as often, like say West Natick. And so all those businesses are basically shutting down where the train station is now. And, but I did swing by there recently and we did post something and I talked to the people at Jam Time, which is the one place that's still hanging in there. So, you know, I mean, that's good for them, right? Because everybody's probably assuming that nothing's going on there anymore. So at least they were able to kind of get that out there that they're still kicking through spring at that location. And then, of course, housing's a big issue. So we've been trying to cover some of the developments that have been going up in town. And sometimes it's as simple as, you know, I did the rounds and took pictures of all the developments and then just gave an update on here's what each of these developments is about. But Judy was at a meeting that I was at where what was the meeting actually about? It was one of those 101 meetings.
Oh,
Yeah.
was that community and economic development?
Yeah, that's right. And I remember it was either you or Brinley had asked about.
I
because
think we tag team
Yeah.
asked about, could we have like a site or a page on the town site where you could post, what are the projects that are in town? Are they residential, business, mixed use? How many, you know, a little bit of, I said, you know, high level, not like what permits have been pulled.
Data facts.
Yeah, so that's what we did. And figured, well, you know, who knows when the town will get around to it. And the town website's getting better, so I don't need to disparage that at all. But sometimes there's just so much stuff on there, right? We just sort of boiled it down to, here's pictures of the projects and here's basically what they're offering. And to the extent that we can find out, here's when they're opening. The developers were not real cooperative, I will say.
A little bit about elections, yes.
Yeah, so this is a busy time for us with elections coming up, so we'll be.
Very, very much so. You know, we talk about covering the news in Natick, and I'll say that, you know, elections, town meeting, that is definitely not our bread and butter. It's disappointingly, we don't get stratospheric leadership for that kind of stuff, but it is our mission to cover elections. It's important, it needs to be done. And so when you think about all the candidates, the work they put into it and what they do to, you know, try and better this town in the way that the government runs is really important to cover. And it's also important if you get some kind of wild card person in here who's running, who might be, you know, nobody knows them. Well, you want to know information about those people. So, you know, doing the candidate interviews, we usually do the candidate interviews for the contested races. Sometimes we've done them for the uncontested races. That's something we're talking about right now. We're trying to decide if we're going to do that. Do we have time to do that? Is it going to be helpful for people to know that, or do we concentrate on just contested races? And, you know, then we try and get the results up as quickly as possible. So, you know, you think about advertisers or people who are interested in Natick reports say, well, you know, what are your numbers? What's important? What's not? And you think about, you can't always be chasing the numbers. We can't always chase the turkey stories. We love the turkey stories. They're fantastic. But sometimes we have to just settle in and do the stories. You know, Bob spends a lot of time doing budget stories, for example. And, you know, you settle in, you do those stories that are important and could be very important in the future if, you know, somebody puts it into the search engine. So that's kind of the two parts of our report. I mean, I could cover restaurants every day, all day, and Natick would be so happy, you know, that would be wonderful, but that would be a different site. It would no longer be a news site, you know, that we're always trying to do that kind of balance. Like housing, for example, we're talking about the, you know, people tend to be concerned about it once their own pocket of town. So, you know, those stories will get, you know, kind of mixed readership, but a roundup story like Bob did, I think will get a lot of readership. So that's kind of what we're always trying to figure out, what we'll write about, and, you know, how much time we spend on it, and is it important? A lot of times it is.
And with the election,
Deborah, when you started talking about elections, I missed one of your words. It says, I think you said you were disappointed in some aspect of it.
Sometimes the readership.
The readership, okay.
That's the numbers of readership. Sometimes people aren't, you know, tuned into the election and the elections and the politics.
Okay.
There are various ways to tell how many people are reading various things. You know, we don't know who individually is reading them.
Right.
But we use Google Analytics and other analytics tools, and we get a general sense of what kind of traffic we're getting for different content.
So, a comment, I read and appreciate your summary of the town meetings. That is really helpful to me. So keep doing it. That's great. And then you mentioned this, work you did around all the buildings that are going on around town. Tell us how we would access that now that you've done it some time ago.
Yeah,
How we
it can be a little tricky. That's a good point. I mean, you can search, but look, what do I search on
Yeah,
exactly,
yeah.
right? So I think we tag stories with different tags, like housing. I'd probably tag that as housing, I'm guessing. So that would be one way. Well, actually, it's not that easy to like search for things by tags, right?
I just put in Natick report housing.
Yeah, is the first thing that came up. Okay.
Right?
Oh, yeah, yeah.
December 23rd, 2020, where Natick's multifamily housing developments are at.
There you go.
First
Or-
thing.
Yeah.
Or if you put in a specific project.
Yeah.
That-
Yes,
that
yes.
Also.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't know the names of all the projects.
That's
Yeah.
okay. If you want, just know why.
Yeah, if you search for like Union Street
Union
and
Street.
housing, you
Yeah.
probably.
Well, there's
probably
a lot of hits just on Union Street, yeah.
Yeah,
Yes.
that's right. Well, that's
Yes.
true.
Bill, I think the answer is you just call Judy and she'll find it for you.
Or Brindley.
Yeah, or Brent,
Brindley,
yeah.
Point. Get a link immediately from Brindley.
I went to BU too.
The one other thing on elections is we do get invited to moderate the Yes for Natick forum, so we have agreed to do that again. So, speaking of numbers, so we get lots of traffic. People see us in different ways. So some people will visit the site directly. Some people sign up for our email newsletter, which is free. We send it out most weekdays. I only send it out if we really have something that I think is worth somebody clicking on. I don't want to just fill people's inboxes. And then we have a lot of social media followers. So, who's to say? Some people will just see a headline on social media and move on. Other people will click on the link there and come to our site. So it's kind of hard to tell sort of what our overall traffic is, but according to Google, we had over 1 million page views this past year, not last year, actually. This past year is a little funky because Google changed its analytics and kind of wiped out a certain amount of the numbers. So I'm trying to figure out how to articulate that. And we try to get involved in the community as much as possible, both because we want to be part of the community and because it helps us do what we do. So we've had a table at the rail trail. We are members of the Natick Center Cultural District. We go to the events. And of course, we go to lots of events. And let's see, just a few examples of our coverage. Now, in some cases, we're first with things. Like we were the first ones to report on this unfortunate situation with Catherine Coughlin's car.
Did somebody call you, or are you monitoring a police?
No, we had a tip on it. Yeah. And so, we were able to confirm things with Catherine and report on that. And then, of course, everybody descended on Natick from all the local TV news stations. And we're talking about Elm Bank. We were the first ones to report on the situation at Elm Bank in recent weeks with Mass Hort not allowing people to sled on the hill, which is the most popular sledding hill in the area. And it was very unfortunate for Mass Hort because I just happened to be there that morning. And I was running with some friends of mine, and we do this annual run on the winter solstice, and then if there's snow, we go sledding. And we all, so you get these old guys with their sleds going over to the hill through the parking lot, and the Mass Hort director scoots by in his car and he's like, "Sorry guys, can't go sledding anymore." And so we took it well enough, but then I went back to him later and I was like, "Do you know who I am?" And I don't mean in that way, but I had actually met him a couple of years before to do an interview about the Cheney building, the building that's been closed up there for years. And so we talked and I said, "Well, I'll post something this afternoon to let people know, because I don't want all these people showing up." Although then I came back because I wanted to get the pictures of kids crying. As the sport director, I broke the news to them, which I literally did. There were like grandparents with their little girl there. I mean, I didn't do the zoom in, but you got the idea, and you saw that, the guy doing its thing. So then, of course, all the TV news stations ended up coming in. None of them crediting it. It's not good form. Really frustrating.
Hey, Bob, why can't we see you?
Getting a lot of echo when you're speaking there, Deborah, but
Oh, hold on.
The no sledding at Walnut Hill too, right?
Oh,
I walked
okay.
by there today, full sledding.
Yeah, I don't know about that.
Yeah, I had seen that it said no sledding, so maybe they got the
Bob.
I think they didn't want Bob showing up.
Exactly.
Well, I think during COVID, they weren't allowing it, if I remember.
But apparently people were turned away this year.
Oh,
And
sorry.
There was
that's
something,
now-
yeah, that I
Yeah,
saw
oh, yeah.
recently.
It was
Yeah.
like, there
Yeah.
was a bunch of kids out there yesterday.
I mean, unfortunately, liability comes up in so
Oh,
many
yeah.
things these days, right? It's like, why is this happening? Why is this happening? Liability, you know, the dam, from everything from the dam to things like this. And so that's just kind of reality on a lot of this stuff. The country club in Wellesley wouldn't let people sled anymore, the Hoyden Golf Course. So there's a lot of that going on. You know, another thing we reported on were the issues that were going on with the town clerk last year. And we really found out about that because I went in just to get the names of the candidates. And it became such a project. I said, this is not normal. And then they left the name of a candidate off the ballot and it ended up being a thing, you know, they had to do a special election.
They left the position off
The
the ballot.
position.
Yeah,
And
Yeah,
so, you
right,
know,
right. So, you know, we were on top of that. But then other times it's just fun stuff. I drove by, this kid had a lemonade stand. It was just completely random. You know, so we try to mix that in, like Deborah was saying, it's not all serious stuff.
Tell about the
I asked
turkey
it-
story.
Take a picture and sure. I'm
Yeah.
sorry, Deborah, what?
Tell them about the turkey story, Bob.
well, yeah, we were covering that earlier, Deborah. Yeah.
I missed it, huh?
Well, you brought it to Bob's attention.
But what I'm not clear is I think that Bob saved the turkey. Is that correct, Bob?
I don't know. I've saved a lot of things.
No, I
saved
believe you
in Wellesley one
intervened.
time by fixing
No.
the lights on the front of
No,
the.
you wrote an update and you called the wildlife.
Correct.
And you intervened because another person wrote dead turkey. And
Yeah.
that spurred you to investigate. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Yes.
And I wouldn't say that we intervened necessarily, but we did get some clarity on the situation. Yeah.
No, like Deborah brings up a good point, like. So somebody on social media said that the turkey was dead, so should we be taking this at face value? Absolutely not. I mean, you know, what is Mark Zuckerberg doing about Facebook? There's no such thing as fact checking anymore.
right.
But, you know,
Yeah,
there's
that's
this
right.
thing as fact checking.
It wasn't dead.
And we, you know, we can't just take those things without running them to earth and finding out, you know, what's the truth.
That was
So-
good. That was very good.
Yeah.
In
Okay,
terms of
that's
what's
all.
next, we touched on the BU thing, but another really interesting thing is we've been accepted into this Tiny News Collective program. So even though we are a for-profit, Tiny News Collective is a nonprofit and they can collect contributions on our behalf and then pass them through to us as a grant. So, you know, I think a lot of people who donate to us, they're not necessarily donating as a tax write-off, but they probably write it off anyway. But I think what this does open us up to is bigger grant-making organizations, perhaps donating to us. In particular, in Wellesley, the Fund for Wellesley,
Yes.
it's part of the Fund for Metro West, is very interested in supporting us, but they haven't really been able to up until now because we're not a nonprofit. So they would be able to make a contribution through Tiny News Collective that would then get passed through to us. So this could be really big. This could be really important for things like if we want to redesign our site. You know, these are the kind of things that we don't really have the funds to invest in right now.
Good question. So.
Have you found that to be an issue, your site at all? It certainly, it looks to me like it's been pretty stable arrangement of how things are presented in all the years that I've been looking at it. Are you growing it or are you, yeah?
It hasn't been an issue, but certainly if we saw in the past, if we'd seen a grant that we thought we were right for, and then we saw it was a nonprofit organization, well, we just said, you know, forget it, we can't do anything. But now we don't have to do that. Now we can fill out that application for a nonprofit organization that might want to support us.
But if you're asking about the site design itself, Doug, is that what you're asking about?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Just,
yeah, I mean, sites could always be more modern, right? So our site was designed 20 years ago, essentially. Is Natick
Yeah.
report basically based on this Wellesley report design, and it has been upgraded over the years, but it probably could use a real overhaul. There's just certain things in the underneath that they could
Yeah.
probably be stronger, and like search maybe could be better, things like that. So I think that's the kind of stuff we'd want to look at if we could afford to pay for some kind of a redesign.
We had a couple additional.
Here's a picture. Here's a picture of Jim Jonas, the friend of the turkey.
Is that a resident at Cedar Gardens, Deborah?
Yes, he brought me my books back and threw them at me. He doesn't want to talk to me because he thought I killed the turkey off.
Oh, you haven't killed a turkey.
That's his best friend, he said. Bob.
Yes.
Where's Bob?
Yeah.
Bob and Deb, I want to invite you on Keeping It Real, my TV show. After Doug and Hannah, I had Martin Kessler, I had Paul Carew, and I want you two to come on. And you can talk about your newspaper, and we can get some funds for you.
All right, thanks, Deborah. We'll be in touch.
I worked
You
as a
did.
fundraiser at Oxfam America. So, yeah, let me know whenever you're ready. You have a standing invitation.
Question.
Great.
I guess.
Question over here.
I've got, I think I understand, but so being able to get extra funds, you would allow you to pay people to do things that you don't have the wherewithal to do.
That could be.
Okay,
That could be.
a special project.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Special project.
Yeah.
Nice, nice.
Did I hear Deborah Mitchell using my name in vain?
Heck no, Paul. No.
I just had a.
Paul, you know you're my friend, Paulie.
I love you. I love you, Deb.
Yeah.
I love you, Paul.
Like
Thank
just-
you. I'll behave.
Before.
Thank you, Paul.
I say, oh, Tiny News Collective. Let's say I make $100 donation. Can I say in the directions that this is to go to Natick Report?
Yes.
Yeah.
They will let you do
Wow.
that. Okay.
Yeah.
Yes.
But that sounds like it would be more helpful than doing the direct donation to at your website.
For the
Because then
donor.
get The
The
Tiny
donor-
News
the
Collective.
donor-
keep
okay,
a
tax
small
deductible.
piece of it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Tiny
Yeah.
News does get a piece of it, but.
Yeah.
Oh, they do. They do.
I mean, I think we're
Yeah.
gonna sort of shift over to that. That's probably the way, just to make it so it's not confusing.
Yeah.
Right.
And, we'll accept that. Tiny News Collective is doing good
Yeah.
work and they'll be benefiting us and it'll benefit our donors.
So I basically just sent in sample pages to them of what it would look like, what you would see, and I'm waiting for approval. So there's some approval process going on right now, but we're in the program, so
Great.
that'll start soon. The one other thing I mentioned on what's coming up next is we are trying to work more closely with the Natick schools, which is one area that we really haven't covered as well as we could. And just some simple stuff like, we in Wellesley, we do an athlete of the week profile, and we work through the sports department, the athletic department for this, and it's pretty formulaic. We work with the athletic director, they work with each of the coaches, they nominate a player, and then we send a Google form to the student athlete and they fill it out. And so we've been doing that for a number of years in Wellesley. We have a sponsor for it, which is a local insurance company, which is great. And back in the day, they used to do this with the Wellesley Townsman, which is the local newspaper. And then the Townsman stopped doing it, and the athletic director was really disappointed about that. So we offered to pick it up, and we ended up retaining the same sponsor, which is great. So I'd love to find a sponsor in Natick that would support this. But I met with Tim Collins last week, the athletic director, and he's all for it. So we're gonna try to start that in the spring. So that'll be cool.
Great.
I can say if you need one for this week, track and field, John Bianchi just this past weekend at the Northeast Regional Invitational qualified for his third event in New Balance Nationals. He's now qualified for 3 events which is pretty exceptional. He broke a whole bunch of records this weekend. And so if you're looking for somebody right now for Natick, track and field, we'd love to have you highlight some of our runners. We had a bunch of girls. We had an exceptional meet. We had a bunch of girls break records, break meet records, and they're ranked like #1. And I would love to touch base with you about maybe a track and field article.
Thanks, Brittany.
Is
As a
that
quick
why you had
aside-
raised your hand, Brinley, or did you have another question? Or oh, took her
Well,
hand
that
down.
was it.
Yeah, great.
A quick aside before I ask my question, I think it would also be great to do something with the performing arts because
I was
Natick
gonna
has
say
really
arts.
enhanced its performing arts program. And
And
I just,
visual arts, like it could just be artists of the.
in
yeah,
general,
arts.
exactly, visual arts too, that would be great. And I spent all weekend worrying if that damn turkey was alive. And the news is so hard that I just have to say, I don't want to worry about the turkey. So anyway, my question is much more prosaic. It's, I'm on the Charter and Bylaw Review Committee and, you know, we've been, you know, it's an issue not having a print media because you've got legal notices that the town is required to put in place, and how can that happen? And you think, well, how can it become accessible to people who, there still are people who are not online or not computer literate, and how do we reach those people? So it's really a problem with the media, I think, and so I'm worried about that, and also things like obituaries. Do you print obituaries? And like, do you submit a fee like to do an obituary like I would for like Metro West or wherever else I was printing an obituary, because certainly the Natick report would be great. So my question is more like prosaic, just quotidian, everyday kind of news things like the legal notices and obituaries and things like that.
Yeah, we always think about sort of what things aren't we doing that a traditional newspaper did.
Yeah.
Right, so we do run obituaries. If people approach us with them, we probably could be a little more aggressive about letting people know that. What I currently do is I round up just the links that are online from legacy.com. And I have a tab at the top of our homepage that says deaths. And if you go to it, you see that roundup every month. So it's not the best, but it's, you know, it's something. And when people do send the obits in, we generally run them for free, but a lot of times people send us a contribution. So that's been happening a lot on Swellesley lately. And so that's good. On legal notices, we've been working for years with Representative Alice Heisch, who's a representative in Wellesley, on changing the law because it's so outdated and it makes no sense. That you have to have something published in a print newspaper that nobody's reading, and it's a waste of money by the town, so.
It's also arguable that there are barriers to accessing it on a digital.
Yes.
News source, but there were barriers to accessing it in a printed source too,
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
So, yes.
Not everybody was getting the newspaper.
Exactly.
And who knows how many people were reading it.
Right.
It's always been available in a copy in the library.
Do you have insurance, Bob? Are you thinking about having
Yeah,
some
but they
insurance?
expanded if they don't know how to use online. I'm not.
I just think that there's obstacles either way.
Yes, yeah.
So Natick did change something in its at town meeting last year, I believe, or but you would know.
Yeah, the Natick bylaws were changed.
Yes.
The things that are required by Natick bylaws have been updated, so I believe Carol, you would know whether maybe that it can be an online media now.
Yeah.
Or
I think
even the
it's
town
on the
website.
charter bylaw.
But of course, the state law,
Charter bylaws.
Right.
yeah, of course, if it's something required by state law, that's another matter.
Yes, and Wellesley has it on their town meeting warrant for this year.
Does Wellesley have any print local?
They do, they have the
Yes.
Wellesley Townsman.
I wasn't sure if that still existed.
But it doesn't really cover Wellesley anymore. It's part of the whole Gannett bio of all the local newspapers. So if you open your Wellesley Townsman, on the front page, you'll see stories about Belmont and Arlington. So it's very
It's disappointing.
strange.
Yeah.
But for some reason, they've kept the Wellesley print product, which is kind of bothers me. I'm not sure why they're doing that.
I don't know why.
Because they got rid of a lot of the other ones.
They just think they see value in the name.
Yeah.
Something they haven't seen. Why not just?
Yeah. So we've had, Wellesley has published some legal notices in Wellesley. And Natick, I don't think has up to this point.
No, not yet. And you know, with I was just thinking, you were talking about the townsmen and we found ourselves in a very interesting position because we were, for a period of time, we overlapped. There's the Swellesley report and there's the townsman and we were covering news and they were covering news. However, we would, town meeting would come along, or local politics and government would come along, and we'd say, well, the townsman's gonna be doing that, so we won't do that. And then when they really truly did no longer cover that, that's when we had to pick that up, and yeah, it just went up a level of what we were doing, coming out of
Do you
what the
guys-
town needed,
Okay.
because the town wasn't covering it, because the townsman, their traditional source was no longer covering that.
I think Deborah Mitchell's got a question.
Do you
Deborah?
guys have any connections to anyone in my daughter is in California in the wildfires? I believe that's the largest disaster in US history. Do you guys have any people that, I mean, I know I have a connection, Natick to California connection. Have you come across any other people, Deb and Bob, that might have some connections or family over there? And have you been covering that story in any kind of way? Connection to Natick, California?
Been kind of keeping an eye on it, Deborah, but it's, you know, we kind of can't cover everything. We really try to
Yeah.
zero in on Natick report, Natick, Wellesley, Swellesley report, Wellesley, but that's not to say that there couldn't potentially be something. I did have somebody in Wellesley who, she used to live in Wellesley and she sent me a link to a GoFundMe. You know, it's like kind of a stretch. Now she's in California. Like, I don't know, that doesn't quite feel right, but
If
there's
locals start mobilizing to do
Yes.
something for,
Yeah. That's a really good
then that would be a great
example,
story. right?
Exactly, exactly. So we've seen that with other tragedies and
Yeah.
situations. So that is certainly, yeah, we would cover.
There are also a lot of local folks who have connections. So there might be a human interest story there. I don't know how you dig them out.
Yeah,
That could
yeah,
be,
yeah.
Looks like Ricky Ball also had her hand up. Ricky, you got to come off mute to speak. Bob and Deborah, I assume you know who Ricky is that correct? Or?
Well, that's in part why I had my hand up. I I came online after you had done the introductions, both of the attendees and the speaker. And so there are many people on this call who I don't know. And I assume they don't know me or my background or the reason I'm very fascinated and interested in this topic. I'm Erica Ball. I was the first select woman of Natick back in 1975. I served 3 terms, and back then we had the Suburban Press and we had the Natick Bulletin. And of course, there was the Middlesex News. It was called something different at that time. Frankly, I can't remember. And this year, I'm marking the 50th year of my election, which frankly, in my life, loomed very large. I
Ricky,
lived in
everybody,
Natick for 64 years. I'm sorry? Most
everybody
people-
in Natick knows you, Ricky.
That's
Well,
newsworthy. That's newsworthy, Bob.
I think that's the height of arrogance to think that everybody in Natick knows me. I don't think that's true, but because I know that with the generations, there are a lot of things that get lost in the process. But I am I'm devastated by the fact that there is no print media in Natick, and frankly, as someone who is now legally blind and not technically savvy, I mean, I do have a computer and I am able to get on Coffee with a Purpose, and but when it comes to keeping up with what's going on in town, that's difficult without having some access to some print media. And I wondered, is there such a thing? Are there any plans for any print media? frankly, I wanted to try and lobby the Middlesex News to hire a part-time reporter to cover Natick, especially since the town has grown so much. And if you look around in the downtown, there are enough businesses that need to be that need advertising in order to draw clients, customers. And I think the town is on a real upswing in terms of growth. And there needs to be some way of disseminating knowledge to people who are not constantly online. And I don't know, I feel like with every day and year, I'm receding into history and not being able to live in today's world. So what do you say to that?
We have no plans to come out with a print product, I can tell you that. It would just be too expensive for us to do, too involved. And, so, well, I definitely appreciate what you're saying. It's not something that we would personally be able to do. I can't really speak to the Metro West Daily News's business model, but print newspapers in general are just cutting back and cutting back. I mean, they do cover Natick occasionally, like they just covered the Solon House situation, and he did a good job on that. And they do cover sports, but it's pretty limited what they really track in Natick.
Yeah.
And I mean, regarding print, I'll chime in and say we have had, we've spoken to many people over the years about who want to start news organizations, news sites, and also want to do print. And we talk about the challenges of print, and they say, well, I'm gonna go for it because I think that people want print, and there is a population of people that do want print, and they come back to us and they say that they found it to be insurmountable in terms of raising the money that they would need to raise, and it just as a business model, they've been able to find it unworkable.
The specific thing you mentioned, Ricky, about you mentioned being legally blind or close to it, or just vision impairments or other impairments. I don't know what any of them are, but I would have thought the digital media would offer more entry points for tools to assist with that, either making the font very large on the screen or having a screen reader that reads what's on the screen out loud to you. I know with print, obviously you can use magnifying glass, but I don't know if other folks know of other things
Well,
that can be
I
done to
do.
make.
My computer does read to me. I can have it read to me in the same way as you're talking to me now.
Good.
But
Yeah. I
there's
see a
something.
couple.
more.
Go ahead. I see a couple of hands up, Brindley and Rick, but Ricky, had you had something more to say?
No,
yeah. Yeah. Okay. Brindley?
Sure. Yeah, so this is something that I talk about a lot with people because I feel it myself, especially. I feel you with the vision impairment, Ricky. I find that staring at a computer actually sometimes is a lot harder. Even if I can make the print bigger, it's still just the length of it starts to make my brain hurt. So I completely understand that. My interest has always been in, and I know that this partnership is probably not at all possible, but I still feel like mentioning it is. So we have a newspaper, a print newspaper that goes to every single Natick residence once a month. And I mentioned it to the town a bunch, and now they're working with them. And I've just always been curious if there was some kind of way that maybe you guys could work with the local town pages. I know it's competitive for advertising dollars, so I completely understand that there's tons of barriers for that. They do a different kind of reporting than what you guys do I didn't know if there was a way for some type of partnership, but maybe you could like have a page in there once a month thing that says, hey, scan for these articles, or some kind of partnership opportunity that would allow your news to go through that paper. I don't know, if that's of any interest. But I do know that people actually really do read the local town pages. So I just thought I'd put that out there because I do think it's a thing, and I wish that they could become more than they are. I wish they could do polls, and I wish that you guys could have some of your article in print. So anyway, that's it.
It's friendly.
It's an interesting idea. We've never approached them. We used to have a local pages in Wellesley. It didn't last very long. It was mostly press releases. I know that the Natick one does some original reporting. My impression is that it's not very much. Yeah. So
It's a great resource.
It's an
if you want to
interesting
get
idea.
something.
It's definitely not a lot, but I have been working on them for a while, and I've been getting them to put things in there. I've been getting them to cover more things, speaking to the reporters and working with the editor and trying to get them to put more things in there. And I really do actually think it would be a cool opportunity if maybe you guys just had like a quarter column that said, hey, these were last month's articles or something, because I also know that people get, so much news comes out every day, all the time, that I find having something that sits on my counter reminds me, hey, I wanted to read that. Whereas that's one of the things I think is the downfall of all digital, is that if I don't read it right then, it's out of my vision, it's out of my view. And if I don't make a note for it, it might be a month later when somebody else brings the article up and I'm like, oh yeah, I wanted to go read that. Anyway.
Well, we hear you, Brinley. We subscribe to the Boston Globe. We get it delivered to our home every day. So true.
I mean, kind of to give our eyes a rest, basically.
Yeah, that's, it's great during lunch, and like Bob says, give the eyes a rest, a little crossword puzzle in the evening. So, this longing for print journalism doesn't fall on deaf ears,
We hear it a lot in various town meetings. We find that town officials will blame the lack of a local print newspaper for the reason they can't get the word out about things, as if people were reading about the townwide financial plan in the tab, which of course they were not.
That's a
So-
lot. They were some revisionist history going.
So that drives me sort of mad. It's different. I mean, I used to speak a lot at BU. I would be invited in every year to talk about what we do. And I would hang out in the lobby at BU before going in, and they would have a giant stack of the Daily Free Press, which was the school newspaper. And that stack, I think, just stayed giant because all the students who would come into the classroom, they have both, yeah. But not a single student would have a copy of it. And I would bring it up every single time I was in there. Like, do any of you actually read the print newspaper? No. And so these are people in their late teens or 20s. I'm sure that applies to most people in their 30s, and it's kind of the way it is.
Yeah. Hey, I think there was another question at MetroWorks, but Deb and Bob also wanted to do a time check with you. When you agreed to come, I think you also said, we can give you about an hour. And it's we'll yak to 10:30, 11, noon to be up, but I want to be mindful of the time. So do you folks need to wrap up and get out of here, or do you have a few more minutes? Or
A few more minutes, but yeah, we do need to move along. Donna, do you have
Yeah, we have Cindy and Donna that have questions.
I just kind of whispered like podcast, and I just think for like visually impaired people, I'm thinking you get a grant for Foundations for the Blind, and you do all the news you can't even see, and you add like a podcast to your thing. That's just, I mean, I'm not in the market.
Yeah, if there would be a way to almost automate it, which there probably will be,
Yeah.
I think that would be conceivable. I think if it would require us to sort of do a
It's too much
whole
labor.
thing, it would just be too much, yeah.
Yeah, and my other comment was, I just wanted to thank you for your article on the Solomon House, because I thought you did a really nice job on that, and I thought it was really even-handed. And I found the coverage of it in the Metro West a little inflammatory. So I find your coverage in general, that's just one example. I probably could pick other examples. But I find your writing really balanced and well done. So I just want to say I appreciate that.
Thank you.
So yeah, let me do as like be a sub moderator here, because we have actually two hands up right here at Metro West, and I know
I don't have any.
Cindy has had it
Well,
up for a while,
I
then,
first
and
was
then,
gonna
yeah.
say that what I heard a long time ago, that what was keeping print local newspapers going was the sports. And then I was gonna comment on, visual impairment, which my mom has, and she manages better with a computer than she does with print. But the trick is figuring out how to get the thing to talk to you and what button, if you can't see which button to push and so on. So it's an issue that, I think the technology will get to the point where it could work with your site.
Yeah, I think if, this is the sort of thing, I think if we had funding to
Yeah.
upgrade our site, that
Yes.
would be probably the first thing
Yeah.
that we would do. There are certain things we already do, in working at mass.gov on the state's website,
Mhm.
this was a huge issue.
Yes.
And so I learned a lot about it when I was
Yes.
there. And I know a lot of things to do to try to make, the content that we produce easier for people who are visually impaired to, digest.
But especially that you have an email, if it's coming by email, then my mom has a thing where she can tell the email to be read out loud.
Yeah.
As opposed to a website, I think it's more complicated for a visually impaired person to navigate a site versus an email.
I mean, there's a lot of little things that you wouldn't necessarily think about if you weren't doing it, but
Yes.
like a lot of times you'll see online, people will say, click here for whatever,
Right.
and that's very
Yeah.
bad. Right, so you want to actually explain what it is that you're clicking on.
Yeah.
Right.
And so there are things like that that we just do as a matter of course.
Yeah.
If you have an image, you always do what they call alt text that shows up in a screen reader, but that you wouldn't see if you were somebody who was just looking at the picture.
Interesting.
So we sort of adhere to all that sort of stuff. We do everything we can to the
Yes.
point we can.
Yes.
But I'm sure there's much more that you can do to make them up to all those standards.
Was there another hand at VentureWorks? I definitely want to be able to get to Diana Hopper's question, particularly since she's new to our group, but I don't want to cut in line.
Go ahead.
Okay, Diana? Yeah,
No,
you
yes,
just gotta
no.
come off mute. Oh, I'm sorry. There's someone else at VentureWorks, okay.
Yeah, thank you very much for the work you're doing, and I will admit, I read all of your email.
That's
I read all of them, yes, I know, isn't it? I noticed that you now have opportunities for people to write letters to the editor or opinion pieces.
Yes.
And I was wondering, do you actually want to increase the amount of traffic you get that way? I also noticed that you had a guest writer for some of the issues in the school having to do with identity and, some of the crisis that was happening last year. And is that another thing where you would actually appreciate people providing that kind of content if they live in Natick and, that sort of thing?
Letters to the editor are definitely encouraged, candidates announcing their candidacy, topical things. That's something we started a couple of years ago, and I think it's worked out great. One of the beauties of online journalism is that we could really publish a full letter, of a few hundred words. So that's been I've really enjoyed working on that. As far as guest writers, sometimes we do get requests for that, and I will go back to them and say, this is actually better suited as a letter to the editor. And that works out really well. It turns out that they might, they were thinking about it as a news piece, but no, this would be perfect for, an opinion piece in that format. So just, that's where we are with that.
But sort of traditional op-eds, I think we've not really gone down that route. It's like a whole can of worms, right?
Yeah.
And things can be so orchestrated these days by campaigns and so forth that that would be really challenging. I think I wouldn't completely rule it out, but I think it's possible. We do occasionally take things like the thing that Deborah wrote on the turkey, and that was sort of just out of the blue sort of thing. So we're open to that sort of thing. I think the articles you were referencing to the schools, that was by our intern last summer.
Yeah.
Ella, yeah. So that wasn't really a guest post. She was actually writing for us all summer.
But Diane, I saw you put your hand down. Did you not have a question anymore, or?
No, I do.
Oh, okay.
You acknowledge me, so,
Yeah.
I hate when people sit at the red light with their blinker on, you know? No, you're turning already. All right, so, someone mentioned about, you know, kind of fading into history, and it, you know, reminded me, like, I feel kind of passionate about, you know, first of all, I want to commend, the two editors. I'm blanking on names, sorry. Just how you've kind of recreated yourselves, and I hope you're finding a lot of fun along the way. You know, and you know, I think people have, you know, created these amazing careers and have made an incredible impact in life. And then, you know, there's later life, and you got to kind of figure out, what do I do now in retirement? Like, there's only so much fun that is satisfying. Um, or, you know, self-indulgent after you don't have to get up in the morning for anything specific. It can be also, you know, on the sadder side, you know, and like, you know, I think there's so much valuable wisdom and insight that can be, you know, passed along and mutually, you know, edifying to young people, you know, like just kind of intergenerational ideas and options for people to share information and intergenerational education.
Thank you.
Good observations. I know Rick has got his hand up, but I also, and again, I appreciate the extra time past 10 o'clock. I also know, Bob and Deb, that you did have one more slide on ways our community can help you, and I want to make sure you have time to go over whatever might have been on your last slide that you want to tell us about. Perhaps, why don't we go ahead and do that, and then we can take Rick's question. So,
I think we've covered a lot of it.
have you covered it? Okay. Yeah.
There's things like, if you have business ideas, we have the idea about maybe partnering with the home town pages. Follow us on social media, encourage people to advertise with us. You know, if you talk to people, if you think that it would maybe help them spread the word, then encourage them. We've had a lot of support, Natick Center Associates, the Farm, Historical Society, they've all advertised. We've had other individual businesses, Mr. Nice Dog on Route 9. So we appreciate all of them. That's been good. And then I had something in here about writing stories, sort of like Gail was talking about. So we're open to contributions, but we recommend people ask us about it first, and then just sending the thing in and being disappointed if it's not right for us.
Good. Okay. Rick?
Well, to sort of another way to contribute that I've done and is through photographs. So if you, rather than, you know, telling them about a story that may be happening in real time, if you happen to be someplace and capture a photograph and send it to the Browns, I think they've been very, you know, interested in those kinds of things. My question was about nonprofits and whether you have sort of a, you know, thing in your more archival section, you know, where you list things on the site for charities. And, you know, if you scroll down, you can read articles that you've done on them. I just would put a plug in to say, I think people might want to know about nonprofits as well, if there were a section on that. And you have a good, you know, you have sections on town government as well. One of the things that advantages that your website has over the town government site is that people are reading news on your site, and it's very easy to click from your site to find out something about once they get thinking about town government. So I encourage you, if you had ever an intern who was interested in helping you on the archival side of your website, to create a you know, a resource for things like Natick 101. You know, these sessions that are very poorly attended and that are very well done by you know, leaders in town to you know, you may have covered them. I can't remember. I can't recall reading about them. It's my memory problem, not your problem. But you know, those things would be wonderful to have some sort of reporting on and link to keep them alive, if you will. Because although you can find them on the town website, if a lot of people aren't accustomed to going to the town website and navigating it, and they have an impression that it's not easy to do, which is easily reinforced on the site. And although it's improved a lot in my experience, it's still something you have to know what you're looking for almost. And anyway, that's it. Just a thought on this whole. I do think you have an advantage. I do think regional newspapers have a great advantage in print over town newspapers simply because there's a greater scale there. And if there were a way to work with them, because they're running into the same problems that all print newspapers are running into. If you found a way for them to, carry links to your site and do other things and feed them occasional articles on Natick, it might be a win-win. I don't know. I don't know if they'd be open to it, but I just thought I'd throw that out, in reference to the past conversation. That's it. Thank you.
Thanks, Rick. Ricky?
Yeah, again, due to my having been late when you opened up, I don't know, is your last name Brown?
Yes.
What is it?
Brown, yes. Yeah.
It is Brown. Is it possible for you to send me a link to your space so that I could communicate with you?
Yep, you bet.
I'd appreciate it if you would send it to Erica Ball, ERICABALL @RCN.com.
I used to have an RCN address.
Not many people do these days. but-
Yeah, we do, but yeah, not many do.
Yeah.
Well, they get $4 a month for us to keep that email
I
address.
remember than it was.
Yeah. And Ricky, I can help you connect with Bob and Deb if for some reason it doesn't work with what Deb just wrote down.
Okay, that would be great.
Yeah.
Because frankly, as someone who is not a digital person, I'm going to be 88 this month, in March. I'm not tuned in, and it's a real problem. And I've lived in Natick for 64 years, and Natick is my home. And what goes on there, even if I don't live there today, still matters to me a great deal. And I would like to be able to continue my involvement there. And having a vehicle such as the Natick Report, which I didn't know existed until today, would help me. So again, thank you for coming on. I think it's the fourth estate is crucial to our democracy, not just to our town, but to our perception of what we as Americans belong to. And I spoke to a group yesterday of youngsters at age 12 who were talking about the government and had no idea how many governments we live under. And they're not alone, believe me. Many adults, most adults are unaware of what and who the government is and where we have to pay attention. So I appreciate your work immensely and encourage you to forge ahead as Natick grows, and we are growing. Just look downtown.
Thanks, Ricky.
Thanks, Ricky.
Thanks,
You're
Ricky.
actually pleasantly surprised to find out that we've written about you numerous times. From your garden to your scholarship awards. all that.
Yeah. So I know Cindy had her hand up. I also really want to be mindful of your time. We're up narrowing in on 10:30, I'm sure. You need to get home so you can start reporting on all the news of the day, right?
I just wanted to ask how you balance, since it's so like 24/7, what's going on? How do you manage your lives? Like you mentioned a little bit on vacation and read the globe, but Just curious how you do that.
Manage our lives.
Uh,
Our work has
Definitely.
just, what's
Yeah.
going on? Yeah.
I mean, it's a little bit of a fluid job, so if I want to go to the gym in the morning, I might stay there for a couple hours. You know, but then because I know that I'm gonna be covering some meeting at night, so
Mhm,
I try to give myself flexibility.
mhm.
And we try to cool it on the weekends for the most part, although there are events to cover,
Mhm.
Natick days or whatever. So we do that sort of thing, but we try to be mindful of that, I would say.
Try to set ourselves up for success for the weekend,
Yeah,
and success being, being able to unwind a little. Yeah.
yeah. I mean, we did talk about vacations earlier. That is a
Yeah.
little bit of a project. That is kind of a challenge, but there are things you can do through the magic of online to schedule things and so
Yeah,
forth,
we do
so
that.
we're pretty good at that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
It strikes me that clearly it's a labor of love, or that you have a passion for the news. Otherwise, you couldn't possibly be doing this job. But thank you so much for spending the time with us this morning. We've enjoyed, what you've been reporting for years, and it's great to get some of the inside scoop on the people that do it. Good luck with some of the expansions that you're looking at with interns and partnerships. So
And keep up the good work. I certainly echo what I can't remember who said, but the reporting, I've so often found in my life when I read reporting about something that I really know a lot about, it's very frequently really not written well, or it's not correct. And your stuff has been very balanced and well researched, so I laud you for that. Thank you.
Thanks for
she's
having
a nitpicker, so I can attest to that. If she's
Yeah.
giving you good marks,
Yeah,
that's good
I
marks.
am a professional, or I was a professional nitpicker. Now I'm a retired nitpicker. So.
So